Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic, which is what if Ino discovered Naruto's secrets and formed a harem with Sakura and Tsunade, Part 2. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Naruto was just walking aimlessly through the streets. He had already had his talk with Tsunade. So far they hadn't come up with anything new against Akatsuki. Jiraiya was on his way to give a report on anything he could have come up with and maybe even train Naruto for a bit as well. Naruto was looking forward to that. But there was something else on his mind lately, and that was the sparring he had seen between Ino and Sakura. He had seen Sakura fight many times. She was always amazing. Hell, she did beat that puppet guy from Akatsuki. But Ino had surprised him. He hadn't really seen her fight since the Chunin exams against Sakura all those years ago. Tsunade still wasn't any help when he has asked about that. She just smirked at him and shook her head, saying that she wasn't going to get in the middle of that. Naruto hated it when people talked about things he didn't understand without explaining it. It was just so frustrating. At any rate, that was what led him to this point. He was starting to think that maybe he should just put his free time to some use with some more training. That spar with Neji had been fun, but he still felt he could get stronger. He had to get stronger. He couldn't rely on the power of the fox anymore like he had when he was a kid. He had to use his own power now and not borrow from the damn fox. Already it had caused him to hurt Sakura. His face fell remembering that. Although he didn't remember what happened when he entered the fox's cage, he did remember when he was told how Sakura had gotten that injury on her arm. It was then that he had to use his own strength first. Jiraiya had been hurt, maybe even nearly killed, and now Sakura. He was hurting those closest to him with that power. So now he thought about different ways to improve. He could try to do the chakra concentration exercises to help him with his control, but he never did have the patience for it. He would most likely just make an army and pass out when he was finished. Maybe he could track down Lee and ask for weights to increase his speed. That could work, although it could take a while for him to build up to the kind of speed he needed. He didn't really know any weapons he could train in other than the usual stuff he carried, and the only weapon user he knew was Tenten. She could be nice, but she could only teach him at her level. So no shadow clones, at least not too many. Plus, what kind of weapon would he even bother to train with? So he put that idea aside and tried to think of more. Genjutsu was out as he just royally soused at it. He honestly had no talent at all for it, so he just skipped it. He might want to look up more wind-style jutsus. That was one possibility. Maybe he could track down Kakashi. He might know where he could get some more. He had decent control over his wind chakra now. Another possibility was trying to find a way to safely use the Rasenshuriken, but if Sakura or Tsunade found out, they wouldn't be too happy with him. He was supposed to be forbidden to even use it, which really soused for him. All that time making such a kick-ass move, and what happens after he uses it to wipe the floor with that weird Akatsuki? Turns out he can't use it because it would ruin his ninja career. Oh well, it wasn't like he didn't know adversity in life, it was just another thing to overcome. While Naruto was on his wanderings, a familiar person had seen him. This was none other than Jiraiya himself, the Toad Sage and Master for Naruto. He had been on his way to see Tsunade when he saw his apprentice. He always did like Naruto. He was a perfect blend of his parents, and over those 2.5 years, he had enjoyed the time with the boy. It reminded him of another time, with 3 other youths back in Rain. He wondered what became of them. He had looked into it, but the 3 just seemed to have disappeared. That worried him, but he had faith that they were okay. He decided to talk with his latest student. Besides, he was still early and he wanted to check in on him. Hey Naruto. Naruto looked over to who had called him and he broke out into a smile. Ero Sennin. The older man sighed. When will you ever stop calling me that? When you stop being such a pervert? He grinned, crossing his arms. I told you that I'm not a pervert, I'm a super pervert. He yelled in his face, totally forgetting that they were out in public. Many stopped to give strange and shocked looks. The women also took several steps away from Jiraiya as well. Anyways, when did you get back? Naruto asked him. Just now, he said, smiling at the boy. So how have things been? Heard that you came up with something new while I was gone. Naruto got a huge grin on his face. Yeah, I completed the Rasengan. I put my wind charka into it and came up with this killer move. Jiraiya laughed as he clapped the boy on his back. That's my student. It took Minato years to just make the Rasengan, but you managed to finish what he started in no time. Yeah, Kakashi-sensei came up with his major training using a lot of shadow clones. Ah, so that's how he did manage to get you to pull it off in such a short time. Jiraiya thought about that. It made sense as Naruto used shadow clones like people wore shoes. He might be the only person to be a true master of that jutsu. With each clone gaining experience, it would cut the training down from years to days. The only reason he hadn't bothered to try that while on the training trip was that the kid just wasn't ready for that kind of training. It was very harsh and no one but him could pull it off in live. But now that he could train that way, there was no telling what he could pull off in the future. Hey, Ero Sennin, can I ask you something? Naruto said, a little more serious but also looking slightly nervous. Sure, what is it? Well, it's just that Sakura-chan and Ino-chan have been acting strange lately, Naruto said. Jiraiya lifted an eyebrow at the last part. As far as he knew, the Sakura girl was the only girl that he used the chan at the end of the name. Had something been going on lately? His pervert sense started to tingle as he felt something really good was going on in the village. He grinned as he looked at the young man. Ino-chan, huh, I thought you liked the little pink-haired girl only. Have you given up or are you making a move on someone else? It's not like that. Naruto said, although he did blush bright red. She's just been really nice to me lately. Nice how? Naruto went on about how she had offered to treat his team but only Sakura could make it. Also how her teammates seemed to have been busy. Jiraiya couldn't believe how the boy could miss obvious signs like that. He had tried to teach him about women on the trip, but he had always been more interested in jutsus and less than ways of the perverted hermit, as he called it. If the boy had, he might have known exactly what was going on. But there had to be something else going on as well. He asked what else was going on with them and he explained the training he saw, and how for some strange reason the girls were going all out suddenly when they knew he and Tsunade were there. He had asked Tsunade but she hadn't told him a thing. Jiraiya, however, could see what was going on. The boy now had the girl he had pinned after for years interested, but also it would seem another girl had entered into the race for his heart. He chuckled to himself at how lucky the boy was. Having two such women would be any man's dream. Naruto, let me give you some advice on women, he said as they walked on. First off, no man, not even me, will ever truly understand them. They had their own rules and way of thinking. You can get some of them, but only a woman can truly understand another woman, I fear. But there are a few things that you should remember about them. First off, if they find something they really want, they will fight to the death for it sometimes. Trust me, I've seen how competitive they can get. They say males are territorial, but we don't hold a candle to women defending what they think is theirs. Another thing is that a woman is known to change her mind, like as she likes some boy, she'll go after him. Naruto sighed and nodded, remembering how all the girls had been like back in school with Sasuke, even Sakura. But like I said, they have been known to change their minds and they could decide they like another boy. Really? So, you think that say one day, a girl that likes one boy for a long time might like another that she didn't like for a while? Jiraiya could see what he was getting to. Yeah, that can happen, but also be prepared. Maybe a girl you never once considered before might like you and decides to want you. That made Naruto blush. Why, you really think so? But how will I know if a girl likes me? The Toad Sage sighed. He really wished Naruto had paid attention when he tried to teach him about women more. There are a few signs. One is that they make meals for you, want to spend time with you, they smile or blush a lot, maybe even a little nervous. They might even try to be more physical with you. Physical. Naruto gulped and grinned at the images that gave him. Jiraiya chuckled as he saw that. Maybe there was hope for his apprentice after all. Hokage's office. Tsunade was having a hard time at the moment. It had nothing to do with reports, those were finally finished thank God, or any political problems on the rise. In fact, it wasn't even something to do with her job as Hokage but more as a woman. Her talk with Sakura had been making her think on her own past. She wondered when it was that she had fallen for the old pervert. Sure, he was a major pervert and wrote those adult books, but what little people knew what that, it was those books that opened her eyes. It all started years ago, while she had been running away from her pain after Dan's death, that she had seen one of Jiraiya's books. She knew the kinds of stuff that were in it, but maybe out of boredom or maybe just curiosity she bought one. Of course she wasn't surprised by the smut in it, she was surprised by the plot between two of the characters. One character was a man that had fallen madly in love with his teammate. Of course the girl blew him off, but he kept on trying. She had read how he would always be there for her and how when she hurt, he hurt as well. How torn up he had been when their other teammate betrayed them. How he had wanted to die when the woman he had loved for years chose another man without even giving him a chance. But he stayed by her side, always happy to see her happy, but always in pain because he couldn't be the one that could make her that happy. Then when her lover was killed and she had gone into a deep depression, he had tried to help but she closed him off. She had gone through half the first book until she realized he had been using his own life to write the books. Orochimaru had been the betrayer, he was the man that had longed to be loved by the woman he cared for, and she was the woman. To actually read the words he put into them, she had been surprised by them. They had been so deep that she felt bad for giving him such pain. But the next time she had seen him, years had passed and she thought that maybe too much time had gone by. But was it too late? Tsunade was waiting for Jiraiya to make a report to her, but she felt strange. She hadn't felt like this since she was a young woman with Dan. This anticipation in her chest, why was she nervous? She knew the old man still had a thing for her. Or was it just an act? He had acted like that for as long as she had known him. Hell, the first day he had made a lame pass at her. Plus even in his 50s he kept in great shape, but she used a genjutsu to hide her real age. How would he react to her real face? Was he in love with the woman, or just in lust with the illusion? It was then that she noticed his presence, at her window no less. Can't you come in through the door like a normal person? She didn't see his face with her back to him, but she knew he was giving that smile of his. Nah, that's not for me, why be like everyone else? She turned to face him as she sat down on her chair, so I take it that you've gotten some information. He shrugged as they both got into more serious nature. They both knew when they had to take things seriously. Well, they seem to be more active as of late, not sure why though. For years they've kept to the shadows, but they're more active than ever. They seem to nearly have them all now. Soon they'll come after Naruto. Tsunade felt a stab of fear into her heart at that. How long? Honestly, it's hard to tell, he sighed as he grossed his arms. It might be soon, but there is more. I've heard rumors that they might have something to with the hidden rain. I'm thinking of checking it out, plus there is something else I want to check on as well. Tsunade had to smile a little as she had a guess. Going to try and find those 3 kids again. I know most would have given them up for dead, he said as he looked out over the village. But you don't know those kids like I knew them. I trained them, and although I wish I could have taken them back with me, I know that they have to still be out there. You always were so very caring to others. I don't know why you insist on making people think you're just some perverted writer all the time. He grinned at her. Hey, don't go spoiling that. I spent years to get that reputation. Besides, if people expect me to be just that, then they won't expect my real skills, plus I am a pervert. She rolled her eyes. He always seemed so very proud of that. Then again, that was one of the things she did like about him, he wasn't afraid to show the world who he was. She hadn't let her genjutsu drop in years, so she couldn't say the same. But still, he made her smile with his antics. He always did, in fact, even when she shouted at him or had to punish him for being too perverted with her. She had always enjoyed their time together. It had been when he had gone away for those years to take care of those 3 war orphans that she had started to miss him. Those had been lonely times, and it was also when she had met Dan. Maybe if he hadn't left, would she had still fallen for him? Dan had been important to her, but Jiraiya had always been there in some way. Well, if that's all, I could use a drink. I've had a long day and I could use some time to relax. Tsunade said as she stretched her arms up to get the kinks out. Also, she gave Jiraiya a subtle little thrill to see what his reaction would be. She held off the smirk as she saw him stare and gulp a bit as her very impressive bust was pushed together. The slight blood from his nose that he quickly wiped away made her know that he was still at least physically attracted to her. You wouldn't happen to want the company of a handsome man, would you? He grinned at her. He was prepared for the usual she would do. She would give him a glare, or maybe even punch him. The truth was that he always found her sexy when she was angry. Why else would he get her railed up all the time? Well, that and it was fun. She surprised him though by doing something he had never expected. She gave him a small smile, and for a minute there, he thought he caught something in her eye that was anything but anger. It was gone before he could fully see it, but something was off here. Sure, I would like that. I keep the good stuff at my place. I usually have to drink there, as having the great Hokage drunk in public, I'm told, is bad for my image. She snorted at that last part. She was a heavy drinking gambler. The fact that people chose to ignore it, she just didn't understand. She paused when she noticed that he wasn't following her and looked over her shoulder. Are you coming or not? Jiraiya had been frozen as something amazing was happening. The girl he had chased after for most of his life not only didn't hit him for making another half-assed pass, but was inviting him to her home to drink. What that could lead to wasn't lost on him. Hell, he had so many fantasies that some of them even started out this way. Something was going on here though. He wasn't going to get his hopes up. At least not just yet, but he would play this out. After all, it was the hope that one day she would accept his feelings for her as genuine and give them back, that had made him last this long. Anyways, what's this I hear with Naruto and a couple of girls? He asked as they left. Tsunade laughed. I'll explain while we get the drinks. Jiraiya lifted an eyebrow at this. Maybe there's more going on in the village than just Naruto and those 2 girls. I think I'll put off my trek into rain, just for a bit at least. He thought as he couldn't help was look at her SS as she swayed her hips while walking. He got a perverted grin on his face. If things shaped up, maybe he could put off leaving just yet. Ino. After a very long and embarrassing talk with her mother, Ino took some light bills for the pain in her jaw while applying the basic medical skills she had to heal her jaw. There was still some discoloration, but it was only a little, and the swelling and pain was lessened a lot as well. Now it was just a matter of going to find Naruto again. She had to admit that it was very kind of him to put her in her own bed like that. Some would only just drop her off with her family, but he always went that little extra mile. She sat on her bed as she thought about how things could have been different if she had known now, what she had known as a young girl. If she had gone after Naruto instead of Sasuke, she started to list how things could have been different. She would have had a boy that would have been fun to hang out with, very kind, and she had a feeling that if Naruto ever got a girlfriend, he would make sure she was looked after. She also wouldn't have wasted years chasing Sasuke, which was all for nothing after he left the village. She groaned as she flopped back onto her bed. She and Sakura had wasted so much time and energy on that boy, and not once had he even noticed them. They had spent time chasing after Sasuke that they both could have used training. As a result, she had passes with average scores. The only reason Sakura was ahead was that she was smarter with the book stuff. Looking at her skills now, she could only laugh at her younger self. But she was getting off topic. She went back to listing the things that would have been different. For one, Without chasing after Sasuke, she wouldn't have lost Sakura. They would have remained friends all these years. Plus, if she had gotten him in the past, the current little rivalry wouldn't be going on as well. Well, that was one thing that she had learned while growing up: you can't change the past, only learn from it. It took Asuma's death to really get her thinking on her life and improving. Maybe if she had Sakura's medical skills, she could have saved him, but because she only took the basic courses, no, she didn't want to go down that road again. She kept coming back to that, and she knew that Shikamaru felt even more responsible. She sighed as she starting to think about how to make Naruto to notice her more. So far the tricking him into a date hadn't worked, maybe she should just be more upfront. On second thought, he never did respond well to women that came on too strong. She needed a more subtle approach, plus he still held a torch for Sakura. She needed to make him feel interested in her in order to make him consider going out with her. Until she could do something like that, then asking him out, he might actually turn it down. Now, the first part was how to get a boy to notice you. She thought about Naruto and the kind of boy he was and what might work for her. It took her some time, but she had remembered that Naruto did offer to help her with her fighting and grappling. A smirk came onto her face at that. With grappling and in such closer quarters, maybe she could both learn something and make him take notice of her. After all, accidents did happen, and maybe they would even talk and get to know each other more. As the plan formed, she felt better to be able to travel. She needed to make sure that Naruto had the day off tomorrow for some training that he offered. Sakura sighed as she got out of her shower. She had cleaned up after her training with Ino had left a major mess. Already her mother had been washing her clothing for her, so she was glad for that. Although her mother had gotten used to cleaning Sakura's clothing when she became a ninja. It wasn't easy to find ways to get things like soot, dirt that had been worn for days while on a mission, to even blood. Her mother hated it when there was blood. She had always been afraid since Sakura started to train as a ninja as a little girl. It had lessened since then, but Sakura could still tell her parents were afraid for her at times. They were merchants by trade, but Sakura never had interests in that. She had wanted something different in her life, and living in a ninja village, you either became a civilian or ninja. So it was only logical for her to become the first ninja in her family. Despite the underlying fear, her parents were also so very proud of her. She remembered when she made Chunin, her parents had taken her out to dinner and said how much she had grown. When she became the apprentice to the Hokage herself, her parents had told her that they were very proud of her. But now she had another thing to think on, and that was Naruto. She needed to do something for him, after all the things they had been through, and to make up for when she had been younger. She had spent the shower thinking long and hard on it. She started to think about Naruto and tried to think of something that would really mean something to him. She could just take him out for ramen, but there were two problems with that. It was more of a friendship gesture, and also her poor savings would feel it. How he managed to eat so much and not be poor all the time, she had no idea. Then again, she had a feeling that the people running his favorite place gave him a discount. With all the ramen he ate there, they had to make up for it, plus they liked him as well. She smiled thinking about how happy he always was to go there, and then the smile fell as it came to her. That was most likely because they were the only people who cooked for him. He never had parents who would take care of him when he was little. Reminded of that only made her feel a bit of sadness of how lonely his life had to have been. She had known loneliness herself before Ino came into her life. She sighed as she put on some clothing she wore while off duty. A knock came on her door. Yes, I got your clothing. Is it okay to come in? Her mother asked. Sure, come on in, Sakura said as her door opened up. In walked Sake Haruno. She was an average-looking woman with the exception of the long pink hair, as this was where Sakura got her hair color from. Her mother's hair had faded a bit with age, but not too much. Also, her mother had cream-colored skin and brown eyes. She was just starting to get a couple of lines on her eyes as she spent a lot of time squinting in her life to read small prints and examine items for damage. I don't know what you did to this, but please don't do it too often. Her mother smiled as she put her clean clothing away. If it was on there any deeper, I wouldn't have gotten the stains out. Thanks, Mom. Training just got a little intense today. Sakura told her mother. Hey Mom, I'm trying to think of something nice to do for a friend, but I can't really think of something. Oh, who is it for, dear? For my teammate Naruto. Oh Naruto, huh? You know, I wish you would bring your team around just once. All these years and you never once brought them. Your father and I only met your team sensei on the day he came to ask about you on your first day. Wait, Kakashi sensei was here. Sakura had never heard of this before. Yes, he did. He said that he was going around to meet the families of his new genins while you weren't home. Didn't he tell you? Sake asked, a little confused. Sakura should have known that Kakashi was looking up on them when they had first formed Team 7, or at least she wasn't surprised by this. And that had to have been a lie, as Naruto and Sasuke had no family at that point. Suddenly an idea came to Sakura. Naruto had never had a family home-cooked meal in his life, she bet. This was the perfect thing to give Naruto, plus she had never invited him over before. Actually, Mom, you gave me an idea. You think I can invite Naruto over for dinner? Sake thought about it. She had only heard things about Naruto. At first they hadn't been too good, so she had been a little worried. But then things people said had changed and she had wanted to meet him, but Sakura said that they either had missions, and by the time things settled down, the boy had gone off for over 2 years. Sakura had been so depressed about that for the first few months. She had been wondering if maybe her daughter had feelings for the boy. She once asked but had stated that she only cared for him as a friend. Now maybe she wasn't so sure anymore. The boy had come back and he seemed very popular lately. Also now her daughter wanted to bring a boy home to dinner. She smiled, wondering if maybe her daughter had moved from her feelings for the Uchiha boy to her other teammate. She was interested to actually meet the boy in person. I don't think that will be an issue. I'll just make a little more for tomorrow. I don't have enough for extra tonight, but tomorrow should be no problem. Besides, your father will be working late tonight and I think I want him here if we have company. Sake smiled. Sakura was delighted for this. Thanks, Mom. I think I'll go find Naruto and tell him. Sakura hugged her mother before running off. Sake just smiled as she watched her daughter go. There was obviously something going on, as she had been like that with Sakura's father Motatsugu when she had been that age. Tsunade wasn't sure what she was feeling as she led her teammate and oldest friend and her secret love to her home. It wasn't what you would think for Hokage. Her home was actually her family's home that she had inherited. It was a 3-story home made of very strong wood. It was said that the first made it himself and the entire family lived in it at a time. Now it was pretty empty with the exception of her and Shizune. She remembered running through it as a child, living with her parents and her grandfather and granduncle. That had been a lifetime ago. Now it was largely empty and she would most likely leave it to Shizune or Naruto. The place was meant for families to live in and she was too old to start now. It was one of the things she worried about with Shizune and now Sakura. The two looked up to her, but both hadn't had many male callers, it would seem. At least Sakura was making an attempt, but as far as she knew, Shizune was still single. For a woman in her 30s, she had better start soon. Life as a ninja was short and she didn't want Shizune to end up like she had. What's up? Jiraiya asked. You looked a little sad there for a moment. She cursed her lack of control on her face when her mind had wandered. Just the ghosts of the pasts. He nodded with her and she was glad for it. He would understand what she was getting at, maybe not exactly, but he would know what she had been doing at least. When you get to be their ages, you start to think back on life and reflect on things. Some people became haunted by their past, so he could understand, given he himself had spent a lot of time with his own ghosts. They went into the quiet home. Shizune was most likely asleep already as the poor girl worked herself hard all day. Tsunade really wished that Shizune would take a day off now and then. Every time she did, the young woman kept giving her excuses. How was she to get a personal life if she kept on working all the time? The phrase, "youth is wasted on the young," came to mind, and it wasn't until now that Tsunade got the full meaning. She led him into the den as she went looking for the good stuff. Her mouth was watering just thinking of the burning liquid that would be in her mouth. She came back to see Jiraiya had settled on the couch. Normally she would have taken a chair, but this was of course not what she had planned. She sat right down next to him, putting the drinks on the table. She caught his surprised look before he quickly hid his expression. "So you said something about Naruto?" Jiraiya asked as he took his drink. Tsunade smiled as she remembered that. Seems like Naruto has got a couple of young ladies after him. Jiraiya chuckled. He thought as much from what Naruto had told him. "Let me guess, those two girls that you trained who were fighting." He saw her surprised look. "Talked to him before I came to see you. I had a feeling what was going on and he's clueless as usual." He sighed as he took his drink. It burned but the taste was great. "That boy just doesn't understand a woman's heart, unfortunately." Tsunade felt that was the perfect opening for her. Tsunade smiled as she leaned in closer to him. She gave him a smile that he had seen on many women. Usually with them trying to seduce some more money out of him. He never thought he would live to see this day. He looked into Ho's brown eyes and didn't see the usual friendliness, the fury, or anything else he normally saw. He saw something else in her eyes, a longing in them for something else. This wasn't the Hokage at the moment. This wasn't his oldest friend and teammate. This was Tsunade, the woman in front of him. A woman that had deep scars on her heart and soul, that had loved and lost and been burned badly by it. He could see, in that moment, just what lay under her touch shell. Someone that wanted to be loved again but was afraid to, or at least had been afraid to. "Tsunade, what's going on here?" he asked her seriously as he looked into her eyes with the longing of a lifetime. "Please, don't tease an old man." She smiled at him as she pressed up against him gently as a hand went to his cheek. He nearly groaned at the slight touch of her hand. Usually the only way he could get her to touch him was to make her pissed. He had wanted for her to touch him like a woman would touch a man for so long. "Do you think an old woman can make up for her mistakes of the past?" she asked him. "I know that I've made some mistakes, but one that I want to correct is one I think it way overdue. That is, if you want me to." Jiraiya felt his heart quicken. He had been with women before. It was his job to get information any way possible. But no one had even come close to making him feel as he was now. He felt like a teenager again. Like he was alone with his first girlfriend in her home while her parents were out. He hadn't felt like this in so long he had forgotten it. "I've wanted this for so long," he said in a whisper as he let his own mask drop. She could see the longing in him, the pain he must have carried for never having what his heart wanted most in the world. She was so sorry for that pain as she had never wanted to hurt him like that. She had just been too scared to open up again. She could also see something else in him, love. He loved her. Maybe he always had loved her, and it was amazing and frightening at the same time. "I know," she told him, moving even closer. "You know, I hope in the next book, that you'll make it so that Akihiko and Mitsuru get together." Jiraiya paused for a bit as he was wondering what she meant, then it clicked. Those were characters from his books. In fact, they were two of the mentors of the main character. She had read his books, and she had figured out that he based Akihiko on himself and Mitsuru on her. "You read them?" He never thought she would once even look at his books. She blushed a little. "I was curious. I think that's when I first started to fall for you. Those words you wrote about them, about how Akihiko felt for Mitsuru, I never knew you could be that way." He felt a bit embarrassed about that. "I could never actually say the words. They always came out fine on paper, but I just couldn't say them." She touched his lips with her fingers as she moved in closer. He could feel her hot breath on his face. Then, Let's not use words. Their lips met, and for Jiraiya, he could have died happy at that moment. This moment was something he had been waiting for decades. Her lips were still soft and he could taste the drinks on her mouth. He pulled her to him and she actually giggled as he did so. She adjusted herself on his waist as the kiss went into a more passionate embrace. All the years, all the build-up emotions that they both had to keep locked up, came out of them like a flood. Tsunade felt his kisses going to her neck as she pulled him close. It had been a lot easier than she thought to get him, but then again he obviously had been waiting for a very long time for this. She felt a shiver run down her spine and kicked herself for not opening up sooner to him. She felt him undoing her top, and that's when she realized where they were. Wait, not here. What as Shizune comes down? She asked him. Well, then we'll just have to change locations. He grinned as he easily picked her up, making her give a surprised yelp as he carried her bridal style. I can walk, you know. This is more fun. Besides, you have any idea how many times I've fantasized about this? He smiled as he started to carry her. Now where is your room? Next day, Ino was already waiting for Naruto in his team's training area. When she had found him earlier that morning, she had managed to catch him and ask him for the training he promised. He had seemed happy about that. She knew that he loved to train with his friends for a few reasons. One being that he had trained alone for most of his life. It wasn't until Team 7 when training started with others. He was also obsessed, it would seem, with training. For him, it was something fun. That was something Ino just could never understand. But that was Naruto for you. She had thought about wearing something a bit more sexy, but honestly she didn't want to come off as a slew or something. Besides, her usual ninja attire was good enough for both the training and the sexy bit. With the short skirt and all the skin she was showing off, how could it fail? She remembered her mother's and father's reaction to her change of clothing. They hadn't been comfortable with their daughter going out like this, but she was growing up into a woman and needed to express herself. Hey there, Ino-chan. Naruto yelled out as he waved to her with that large bright smile of his. She couldn't help but smile back as she waved. Naruto's happiness was always infectious. He just had this warm personality that you just wanted to wrap around you and never be without it. How had such a guy stayed single all this time? Well, the fact he had been kind of immature earlier, he hung out with perverted teachers, and a few more incidents. She still remembered that one mission with him to get a princess married to her arranged husband. That had been the worst mission of her life, and not to mention an incident with Naruto that she never wanted to speak of again. Okay, so maybe it was moments like that had blinded to the other side of him for all this time. But she was willing to overlook his negatives and now saw all the wonderful positive things about him. Hope I didn't keep you waiting long. Naruto said, grinning. No, I haven't been here long. Ino smirked at him. So what's up first? First they did some warm-ups and some stretching to get their bodies ready. Naruto then said that a light spar would help him understand her fighting style better. He had seen that fight with Sakura, but in this they wouldn't use any ninja tools, or anything other than taijutsu skills. Ino had to admit that Naruto had become a better fighter since he left. She remembered when he used to just fly into a fight with no real technique behind it. He had basically just brawled into fights. You've really improved, Naruto, Ino said as they took a break. Naruto was proud someone had noticed. Yeah, Ero Sennin trained me in taijutsu a lot those years. He said I really needed to refine my fighting skills. Well, it shows, she told him honestly. So you think you can show me some moves? Naruto spent the next hour teaching her a few punches and kicks, with some follow-up combos. Ino had learned a few new tricks that she couldn't wait to use on Sakura in their next spar. She would be in for a surprise, that was for sure. Next they moved into more grappling moves for her training. She didn't know much about them, as she had never trained in this type of fighting. She is a distance fighter, and when she got in close she knew the basics but nothing beyond that. It wasn't as easy as she thought it would be. Apparently grappling was very complicated and you had so many counters for every move. They went slow as they went into the motions and practiced them. Ino had to admit that having him this close and touching her was very nice. She noticed how nervous he was when his hands had to touch and the times he blushed as well. But Ino found out that he was a good teacher as well. He made it simple and easy to learn. For the next 2 hours they trained, and by the end, Ino felt like she had learned a lot. Alright, let's see what you've learned, Naruto told her as they had finished with the grappling lessons. Naruto always enjoyed training with someone, but this was the first time he was actually teaching. Well, other than what he taught Konohamaru, but those were different. This was with a friend that wanted his help. He got into a ready pose as he waited for Ino to start things off. She came at him very quickly as he launched out a punch. He dodged with a half step and grabbed her wrist and quickly tried to her it behind her back for an arm lock. Ino felt her arm being twisted back, so she quickly did a modified cartwheel to untwist it. She grabbed his own wrist to get him into a reversal. Naruto quickly countered, and on that went. Each time they went for a joint lock they would find the other would counter. Eventually Ino thought she had him, that is until she felt his foot hook the back of her ankle. The next thing she knew, she was falling to the ground with him on top of her. He had her wrists pinned as he was over her, smiling at his victory. She paused, panting as she took a moment to enjoy the situation. He had some sweat on him and he was breathing hard. He looked very sexy to her in that moment. She felt totally under his power, and given how close they were, she wanted him to slowly go down and kiss her, like in some romantic moment she had seen countless times in the movies. The hero would be over his lady and they would slowly start to kiss. Her face blushed as the mental images of this situation brought out in her. They were alone and anything could happen. Naruto took Ino's pausing as a sign that she was giving up. He grinned down at her, noticing the red on her face. He just thought that she was just flushed from working hard, not of the many different fantasies that were playing through her mind at the moment. That was very good, Ino-chan, but looks like I won. Oh really? Ino's mind came back from fantasy land as she heard that. If there was anything that Ino didn't like, it was losing. She suddenly got an idea on how to turn the tables on Naruto. You know, if anyone saw us like this, they might think we were up to something perverted, she said sweetly to him. She slowly raised one of her knees up, getting ready for her opening, just as she thought Naruto looked to see how they were. He blushed as his grip instantly was lost as his hands let go of her wrists. Before he could apologize, Ino capitalized and pushed up and twisted them both. Now Ino was on top of him, holding him down by his shoulders. She took time to enjoy just how strong his shoulders were before she smiled at his pouting face. Hey, that was cheating, Naruto said. She just giggled. He just looked so cute when he pouted like that. She gave him one of her very sexy looks as she slowly lowered herself down against him. Naruto got more nervous as this wasn't the kind of thing he had thought would happen. He could feel her body pressing up against his face felt really hot too, and his throat got very dry. Ino was a very good-looking girl and he had never had a girl like her this close to him like this. All is fair in love and war, she told him in a husky tone. Besides, you should be prepared. If you're not comfortable around women, they could take advantage of you like I just did. Naruto never thought about it. It was true that he didn't have any experience with girls. Hell, he had never even kissed one before, and this was the closest he ever got without being hit. Although he had to admit, it felt really nice. Ino felt she had enough fun with him for the moment and gently got off him. She offered him a hand as she helped him up. Thanks for the training, Naruto. I really enjoyed it and I hope we can do this more often, Ino said to him honestly. Sure, I'd like that, Ino-chan, you're getting really strong. He grinned at her. She smiled at the compliment and she decided to reward him for helping her. So Ino got close to him as again he got a confused look on his face. Then she gave him a quick kiss on his cheek, making his eyes nearly bulged out of his head as his cheeks blushed a lot from it. He had never had a girl kiss him on the cheek, well, when he was awake that was. He still had that picture of the Princess Yukie, but he hadn't been awake while resting in the hospital when she had. Hey, are you doing anything tonight? Ino asked, hoping that he was free. Tonight? Naruto thought, but then he remembered his promise to Sakura. Oh, sorry, I can't. Sakura-chan invited me over for dinner with her family. But I'm free tomorrow afternoon if you want to get together. Oh, okay then. Ino kept a neutral expression on her face when he told her that. They made plans to meet up later in the afternoon tomorrow. She watched him leave as she thought of what he had told her. There was only one thing that Ino could think of when he told her that Sakura had invited him over. Damn, why the hell did Forehead have to think of that? That would have been a good idea. Now I'll have to work even harder to get his attention. Well, I'm not losing. Ino dusted herself off and went home to shower, change and plan her next move. That evening, Naruto was a little nervous. In all his life he had never, not once, been asked over to a friend's house for dinner. It was really a new experience for him. A bit of him was scared that Sakura's parents would be like those that thought of him as nothing than the demon. Then again, he had never met Sakura's parents. He didn't know much about her family now that he thought about it. Man, all this time asking her out for dates and stuff, how come I never got to actually know Sakura-chan? He thought to himself. Maybe they would have gotten to know more about each other if they both had been more open as kids. She had been too busy chasing Sasuke, and he had never liked to talk about his life. He always bragged on how great he was, or was going to be, but never about his past. Well, on the off chance that her parents didn't hate him, he wanted to make a good impression. He had quickly showered and changed into his civilian clothing, the black shirt with the spiral on it, but with some decent pants to go along with it. He wasn't sure if he was to dress up or not, but Sakura had told him it wasn't formal. Still, he tried to look his best. He kept walking until he found Sakura's home. She lived in a building that the lower part was some kind of merchant store. He saw plenty of items, but they looked more like stuff you buy for your home. Things like a vase, full-scale mirrors with gold trim, lamps, a few TV sets and such. He couldn't make out much, but the Haruno store looked pretty decent. Maybe that was another reason he had never met her parents. This wasn't the kind of store he went into. Hell, he still had all his original furniture since the third had given him his old apartment. At any rate, he found a door that would most likely lead to the living area above the store. He pressed the ringer and hoped he was on time. After a few seconds, the door opened and he smiled to see Sakura there. Hey there. Good timing, Naruto. Come on up. Sakura led him up a flight of stairs and he came into what looked like a small area where you put away shoes, coats and stuff. He kicked off his shoes and followed her into a living room. It wasn't a bad place. As he looked around, you could see that it was very well lived in. Pictures lined the walls, items with sentimental value were placed in plain sight, and very well clean. It was the total opposite of his place on so many ways. Why don't we sit down? Mom is just finishing up and Dad is finishing his inventory. Sakura told him, and for a moment was wondering if they should be in seats or take the couch. Take the couch, then we can sit together with him, maybe even sit right against him. Inner Sakura's voice rang out. Since Sakura was much more outgoing, her inner persona hadn't much to say at times. Although she usually ignored her inner voice, this time she might actually take it. Come on, we'll take the couch, she said, feeling a little heat on her cheeks. Naruto felt himself blush at the thought of sitting so close to Sakura in that kind of setting. He nodded and the two sat down, only a few inches separating them. Thoughts of earlier with Ino ran into his mind, how close he had been with her and then how at the end she had actually kissed his cheek. The blushed a little heavier at that. He still hadn't figured out why she had done that. Meanwhile, Sakura didn't like the silence and decided to start a conversation. So how was your day? Anything interesting today? She asked him, smiling. Oh yeah, me and Ino-chan were training today, he smiled back at her. Sakura's smile was frozen in place as she heard that. Oh, really, how was it? It went really well. Naruto felt himself blushing again as he tried not to remember the more physical parts of it. But it wasn't easy. He never knew that Ino had such soft skin, or how it felt when she pressed her chest against his body. Sakura could see his reaction. Obviously Ino had tried something with him. Well, whatever she had done she wouldn't lose. She felt her nerves being overridden by her jealousy as she got closer so their bodies touched. It was only after his arm brushed up against his that her common sense kicked in and realized that maybe she shouldn't be so impulsive. To hell with that. It's not being impulsive and thinking too much which made you waste too much time. Inner Sakura shouted out. Naruto noticed how close she was and felt his body heating up, where girls always liked this when they got older. He remembered when Ino and Sakura would have nothing to do with him when they were all younger. Now both were getting very physical with him, not that he was complaining. It would just get some getting used to. Thankfully a welcome distraction came into the room carrying a small tray with a tea set on it. Oh, I thought someone was here, Mrs. Haruno said as she walked into the room and set the tea set on the table. So you must be Naruto that I've heard so much about. You've heard of me. Naruto blinked in surprise. Why, of course. Sakura talks about you often, you know. She said, smiling at them as she looked the boy over. Now I see why my daughter does. Mother. Sakura grew really red at this as her feelings were being pointed out like that in the open. Her mother just giggled a bit as she started to pour tea out for them all. Ah, finally all that was done, a male voice said. It was Sakura's father, Motosugu Haruno. He was a tall man with a slim build. He had short brown hair and was clean cut. The one thing that did stand out were his green eyes. They were exactly like Sakura's. Oh, that's good to hear, Sake Haruno smiled. I was afraid you would be down there still. Oh no, I managed to get all the new inventory done, would have had it done sooner if they delivered it on time. He stretched out to get his body more relaxed and then noticed his daughter with a boy. Ah, so you must be Naruto, nice to finally meet you. Naruto smiled at the older man. Thanks, Mr. Haruno. Don't be so formal, son, he laughed as he sat down. You can call me Motosugu, you know. And don't be afraid to call me Sake, dear, Sakura's mother told him. After all, you've been with Sakura for years now and seem to be very close, it's the least we could do. Oh, okay, thanks then, Sake-san. Naruto was feeling more at ease now. Her parents seemed really nice and he was glad to feel welcomed into their home. Eventually Naruto felt really comfortable in the Haruno home. When the meal was ready they all sat down at a nice table. The parents were at either head of the table and Naruto and Sakura sat across from each other. Naruto looked at all the food. He did eat other things than ramen now and then. A few things he didn't know what they were, but they looked good. He couldn't help but get a nice large portion for himself. When he started to eat he couldn't help but like it. Apparently Sakura's mother was a really good cook. Wow, this is great, Naruto said after a few mouthfuls. Why, thank you, and you seem to have a very healthy appetite, Sake said, seeing how much the boy was eating. She was wondering if the boy ever ate anything at all. Then again, he was at that age, when boys ate a lot and seemed to gain nothing. Yeah, Naruto has always had a big stomach, especially for ramen. Sakura giggled, glad that Naruto was eating normally and not wolfing it down like he sometimes did while at the ramen stand. I used to be like that at his age, Sakura's father said, laughing, although I grew out of it. Since I started to put on too much weight I had to stop. Not a problem for me. With all the training I do I pretty much burn it all off, Naruto grinned his fox-like grin. Sakura smiled as she saw his playful grin. She had seen it many times but she had never taken the time to really look at him. It was actually very cute looking. She was looking a little too long as Naruto noticed her staring. Huh? Something wrong, Sakura-chan? He blinked in confusion. Nothing. She quickly went back to her meal hoping he didn't notice the blush forming on her face that she could feel. What she didn't notice was her parents noticing if they shared a secret look but said nothing on the subject. Over the course of the dinner, the Haruno family would ask Naruto questions as he did the same. They learned a bit about each other that night. Naruto learned that Sakura's family hadn't been here the night of the Kyuubi attacked. They had been on a trading mission and only got back after it. Sake hadn't wanted to go, but her husband didn't want to leave his pregnant wife behind. It ended up being very lucky for the both of them. Also, a lot of the merchandise he had gotten had been very helpful to the village after the attack. Sakura's parents also learned a bit more about Naruto, how he planned to be Hokage one day. They learned that he was very close to the Tsunade and Jiraiya, like the rumors had said they were. Although they were surprised at how he got away with the nicknames he gave them. Sakura and Naruto would go into a few of the more pleasant stories, sometimes even finishing each other's sentences at their shared experiences. Overall, for Naruto, it was the first time he truly felt what it was like to be part of a family. Sure, it wasn't really his family, but Sakura's parents made him feel welcome in their home. All his life he had wondered what a family dinner was like. He felt a bit of pain at the loss of never having this growing up. But that was soon replaced with the joy of actually experiencing it. He was always one to focus on the positive, and not the negative after all. He felt very happy, and a part of him didn't want it to end, but he knew it had to eventually. When it was time to leave, he made his farewells. "I hope you come again, Naruto," Sakura's mother said to him, smiling. "It was very nice having you over, so I hope that Sakura invites you more often." "Really?" Naruto's face lit up at this. "I don't see why not," Sakura said, taking his hand. "Come on, I'll show you out." As they left, both Sakura's father and mother watched the two of them leave with knowing smiles on their faces. "They do make a nice couple," her mother said. He nodded. "He seems like a good kid, plus he makes sure that our daughter keeps coming home. Can't fault a boy for something like that," he said, holding his wife. It was always scary whenever Sakura left for a mission. Each time they wondered if today was the day they would be told she had been killed. But meeting Naruto helped to put their minds at ease. Naruto was all smiles when he got to the front door with Sakura. "Thanks for everything, Sakura-chan, this was a great night." She was happy that she had made him happy. "It's no problem, and if you ever want to do it again, don't be afraid to ask, okay?" She noticed something change with his smile. It wasn't the broad one that lit up a room. It was small, but it seemed to pack more emotion into it. His eyes got this look in them as well. The joyous look was replaced with something else, something she had never seen in his eyes before. She hadn't noticed just how expressive his blue eyes were, or how lovely they were. Thinking on it, she had never seen eyes like Naruto's anywhere else, never that shade of blue or the intensity they held. "Thank you," he said in a voice that was barely above a whisper. She felt that this was a side of Naruto that he kept hidden, that part of himself that he didn't show because it would only be a burden to those around him, at least in his mind. Her heart ached for what he must have endured in life to hide this side of him. Before she knew what she was doing, she leaned forward and, going slightly on her toes, she planted a small kiss on his cheek. The same cheek that Ino had kissed earlier. Naruto was bright red now, as Sakura had just kissed him. Twice in one day, two good-looking girls had just kissed him. He noticed a slightly shade of red on her cheeks now. It really made her looks really cute for some reason. "You're welcome," she told him as she quickly went back inside and closed the door. She rested her back against it as her heart was hammering in her chest. She couldn't believe she had just did that. She had just given Naruto a small kiss. Sure, it wasn't on the mouth or anything, but was it too forward? Although she did feel a smile growing on her face as she felt the emotions of kissing Naruto, it felt right to her. Naruto just stared at the door, totally stunned. It was a full minute before he realized that he should be getting home. Although on the walk home the images of Ino and Sakura kept running through his mind, the way that he had been noticing Ino, the warmth of being welcomed in Sakura's home, and the kisses at the end of each one. His hand went up to his cheek as he felt the lingering sensation of his last kiss fading. He had no idea what was going on, but there was something going on and he was going to find out. It was the next day and Naruto went through his usual routine when he got up. He hadn't really slept all that well because his mind kept racing. So even with only 5 hours of sleep he woke up early and couldn't get back to sleep. So he just got up anyway. He sat down in the kitchen as his breakfast was cooking. His mind kept playing back to when Ino and Sakura kissed him on the cheek. They both felt really nice to him, but was he supposed to feel nice about it? Were they just being friendly to him or was it something more? After all, they had been a lot nicer lately for some strange reason, but maybe that was just part of it. But the fact was that he just didn't know. Even with nearly 3 years being around Jiraiya, he didn't know much about girls. Then again, that was because he kept trying to make Naruto do things he wasn't ready for, and most of the things were perverted, so Naruto had just tuned him out to get to more training from him. Now he was wishing he had paid more attention to his lessons on women, although there were still things he wouldn't want to try if a second chance. On his 15th birthday, Jiraiya had tried to get him into a brothel. Of course, Naruto had no way to know exactly what that was until he had stepped inside. He had seen the room full of beautiful women in clothing that was either very provocative to just downright sloy. When Jiraiya explained what the place was for and why they were there, Naruto had ran out of the building faster than any point in his life. Okay, sure, there had been that temptation, but he wanted his first time mean something. Well, okay, he wanted his first time to be with Sakura, but still he didn't want to have just some random woman paid to sleep with him. But despite that, he had very little experience with girls. He never understood them and they seemed to get angry or act weird around him. Like how Hinata always stuttered, played with her fingers and fainted. He always thought that she was that weird and strange girl while in school. It wasn't until he got to know her that he saw her as more than that, but in all honesty he didn't know much about her. He thought of the other girls he knew and how little he knew about them. Tenten was on Team Guy. She was into weapons, seemed to be the sensible one and liked her hair in those buns, but other than that, he didn't know much about her. Tamari was Gaara's brother, had a temper when she lost it, can be kind of scary and used wind and that fan, but nothing else came to mind. Looking through all the women he had met, he never knew much about their personal lives. So far he knew a lot more about Sakura, only because of that dinner last night. He had learned more about her in those few hours than he had in the years he had known her. But still, he had no idea what to do now. He came to the decision that he needed help. Naruto went to the Hokage's tower. If anyone could help him understand women, then another woman could help. So Tsunade was the first on his list. He jumped across buildings and decided on the window on his choice of entry. If she couldn't help, well, he could always ask Jiraiya. He had been a little helpful before, and if anyone knew where the old hermit was, then she could help him out with that at least. He didn't have time to go through the normal way anyway. But he was disappointed to see that Tsunade wasn't around. He did see Shizune working hard at the desk. In fact, she was working a lot harder than normal. Hey, I bet Tsunade Bachan is hungover and Shizune Nichan is covering again, Naruto thought as he came up to the woman. Shizune had an earthly beauty about her. She wasn't stunning, but she was pretty. It was hard to peg her down. At times she acted mature and cool-headed, then she would slip and be almost like a teenager. At the moment though, unknown to Naruto, she was working so hard to have something to focus on. She needed something, anything to just forget what happened. Hey Shizune Nichan, Naruto yelled out, startling the older woman. She jumped out of her sheet with a yell to see Naruto. Please don't do that. The boy only laughed a bit. Sorry, anyway, have you seen Tsunade Bachan or even Ero Sennin? Shizune's face got fully red at that. She looked a little shaky as well, and Naruto thought she might be coming down with something. Hey, are you okay? I'm fine. Nothing happened. Shizune yelled out. Huh? Nothing happened? Naruto asked, confused, looking at the older woman that had become like an older sister to him. He looked around the office. Nothing seemed out of place here, so if there was something going on, it wasn't here. Did something happen? Hey, does this happen to have something to do with where Ba-chan and Ero Sennin are? They're not planning something like a mission, are they? Shizune went pale as her mind went back to earlier that morning. Flashback. Shizune had woken up to the sound of her alarm clock. With a single hit she shut the thing off and only sighed before forcing herself up. Years of living with Tsunade had forced her to get out of bed, because if she never then Tsunade would never. Her mentor was a heavy sleeper and liked to sleep in, especially if she had too much sake the night before. With a few stretches she went about her morning routine, bathroom, got a small shower to help her wake up. She couldn't help but look herself in the mirror. Although she was 30 she looked a lot younger, she was pleased with that, but at the same time she felt like she needed to move on with her life. Lately she had seen couples and felt a hollow part inside of her. She never really had a decent long-lasting relationship. Always on the move with Tsunade since she had been a young woman in her teens meant little time to put down roots. But being back home you'd think she could finally find the time. But it wasn't easy, with her job helping Tsunade and plus the fact she was still kind of shy around men. Shizune groaned as she pushed those depressing thoughts aside. She was still young and had plenty of time for that kind of thing. So with that, she put on a robe and went to wake up her mentor and someone who was like family to her. Although there had been downsides to being under Tsunade's care and working for her, she wouldn't have changed a thing. She gently knocked on the door, mainly because if she was in a foul mood she had a tendency to throw things. And with someone of her strength that could be anything that wasn't bolted to the floor or on fire. She waited and guessed that Tsunade was in one of her deeper sleeps. Tsunade-sama, it's time to get up, Shizune said, but still no reply. It looked like she would have to resort to going in and waking her up physically. She opened the door, but the sight she saw was something she had never believed would happen. Plus it was also a sight she wished she had never seen. There on her bed, the sheets were all thrown around and only a thin piece of cloth was just barely covering the two occupants. Tsunade was curled up against none other than Jiraiya, both mock, and both wearing smiles. Shizune froze there in pure shock, her mind had just shut down at this. Since when did this happen? How long had this been going on? And why couldn't that sheet cover him from the waist down? She tried not to look, she really had tried, but it had just been hanging out there. She blushed, and that was when Tsunade turned onto her back and she saw all the love bites on her upper body and the scratches on his chest. No more Jiraiya, I'm tired and sore, Tsunade said in her sleep. Shizune couldn't take any more. She quickly shut the door and ran to her room and locked herself in there. She decided on another shower and to wash her eyes out. That was the absolute last thing she ever wanted to see in her life. Bloody and wounded bodies she could take, those two in that position, never. She quickly dressed and snuck out of the house. She needed to have some time to herself and focus on something, anything. She just hoped she could look the two in the eyes again. Present. Naruto was starting to give her a very worried look. She had been staring into space for a full minute and she went from pale to looking kind of green and then red. Maybe she was really sick with something after all. If she was sick then she really needed help, so he quickly grabbed her arm, which got her out of her memories. You look really sick. Come on and take me to where Ba-chan is so she can take a look. Naruto said seriously. Shizune fought off Naruto's hold. No. I'm fine. I'm really fine. We don't need to see Tsunade-sama. You sure? Naruto looked at her face. Her color looked better, but she looked to be sweating a bit now. Shizune couldn't face Tsunade. Not yet, but there was also the fact that what if she was still in bed? He fought the shudder at the return of that mental image. If they were and Naruto just barged in like he normally did, it would not end well. She had to think of something fast, something to make sure that he didn't try to find Tsunade just in case. She's not even in the village, she quickly said to him. You were right, she and Jiraiya-sama are visiting, informants. Yeah, one of Jiraiya-sama's informants have information but only will give it to the Hokage. They'll be gone for a bit. Oh, so that's it. Shizune sighed at her lie. Thankfully Naruto wasn't good at detecting lies. I'll find Sakura or another medic just as soon as I finish up this last batch of paperwork, okay? Naruto thought about it and nodded. He trusted Sakura to help Shizune and there were other medics. Besides, he wasn't sure if Shizune was someone he could talk about girls with. She was like a sister, so it would be really odd for him. Maybe he would try later when he couldn't find someone else. Plus, if she was sick, he wanted her to get better before he threw his problems onto her shoulders. Well, okay, I can look for someone else if they're both out of the village. I'll see you later and get well soon. Naruto smiled as he jumped out the window. Shizune watched him go and sighed as she collapsed into the Hokage's chair. She felt so drained and it wasn't even close to noon yet. She groaned as she rested her head on the desk. Maybe it was time to finally take that vacation that Tsunade had been trying to get her to take. Just go somewhere and relax, not thinking about work, not thinking about her own lack of relationships in her life, and most importantly not thinking about what she had seen this morning. So as Naruto left the Hokage's office, he was left trying to find other people he could ask for help. Kakashi was still out on a mission and wouldn't be back until tomorrow. Yamato was with him as backup apparently too. He didn't know if Yamato had any experience with women, as there wasn't much about the man he knew personally. Kakashi read all those books by Jiraiya, so Naruto figured that Kakashi would know more about women anyway out of the two. He didn't know any of his female friends enough to get their opinion on girls, or at least he wasn't comfortable with that. Since Sakura and Ino were the ones he was confused about, they were out. Tenten didn't seem the girly type to him. Hinata was nice but weird. She always fainted and he might even get any answers out of her if she did that again. He thought about his male friends. So far they were all single, so what would they know about girls? He became a bit depressed over this. Was there no one he could turn to? He sat on the rooftop where he was thinking about it. Maybe there was one person that might help. He took off for Sai's place. Now, although Sai had no experience in a lot of personal stuff, the guy read all about those subjects. Sure, the boy didn't always put it in the right context or misunderstood things, but it was better than nothing. And he had gotten a lot better. When they first met, all he did was insult people all the time. After that failed mission to capture Sasuke at Orochimaru's hideout, he had changed. He was still clueless, but he didn't use insults with people anymore. He knocked on the door hoping he was home. The door opened to reveal Sai's pale face. He had on a neutral expression, but on seeing Naruto, he switched it to his usual plastered smile. Naruto knew that Sai's smile was just something the other boy did to fit in more with others. Although at times he had seen Sai really smile, he wondered just how much Sai could feel at times. Sure, Naruto had been lonely growing up, but Sai had it even worse, with his emotions slowly being stripped away along with whatever his real name had been. The only person Sai had been a brother of sorts. But since coming on Team 7, Sai had slowly been regaining everything that made a person human. He researched every part of social interactions. It was that part that Naruto hoped that could help him out. Ah, Naruto, what can I do for you? Sai asked. Actually, I was kind of hoping you could help me with something, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. Can I come in? Sai moved away as Naruto stepped in. He hadn't really been in Sai's apartment all that much, maybe twice. But the place was still the same. Everything was neat and tidy and organized. It was also filled with Sai's drawings, sketches and paintings. There was everything from animals to landscapes, although Sai rarely drew people. That was odd to Naruto, but figured that was just what Sai liked to do, and he did it very well. In fact, he is kind of secretly envious of Sai. He had no real talents outside of being a ninja like Sai. Well, there were his pranking skills, but that was hardly the kind of thing he did anymore. In fact, usually his spare time was just training. Sure, he relaxed now and then, but he didn't have anything like what Sai did. Naruto knew he had no talents in things like art, music or anything like that, but looking at all of Sai's painting he kind of wished he did. It might be fun to have a hobby that he could enjoy, but he just hadn't found anything he had any talent for yet. At any rate, he was getting distracted and needed to get back on track. Hey Sai, you keep reading all those books about people and stuff still, right? Sai had a momentary look of confusion on his face. It was one of the real emotions that he knew Sai felt. Yes, is there something you wanted in particular? Yeah, see, I've kind of been getting some mixed signals and I need help. Do you have books about, well, girls and stuff? He felt really embarrassed asking about this kind of thing, especially to Sai of all people. But Sai just smiled his usual smile and went to pick up several books. Apparently he had been reading up on it. So what exactly is your interest? Sai asked him, still trying to get Sakura to like you. Naruto sputtered as he tried to think of an answer, although Sai knew it already. Although he didn't understand the whole dating thing, he was well aware of Naruto trying to get Sakura to go out with him. Although he never knew why, the woman was a great comrade and to have someone backing up your team. But she was too violent at times and was hard to understand. Kind of like that blonde friend of hers with the long ponytail, he thought back to Ino. That girl would act nice but could switch very quickly into violent demeanor with her teammates. I just need some help in understanding girls a bit, Naruto said as he looked through one of the books. Ah, Sai had read many books on this. That is one of the most difficult subjects. From all the books I've read, I haven't seen any book totally agree with the other. What? Really? Naruto started to feel a bit disappointed now. He was hoping that maybe there would be a book that could explain everything, but if what Sai said was true, then how could he trust any of the books to give him the right answer? This Suk, why do girls have to be so hard to figure out? Naruto sighed as he dropped his head. Man, I'll never get those two then. Sai blinked as he thought about what Naruto just said. At first he thought that Naruto was here only because of Sakura, but that last statement meant more than one woman was involved. This was very interesting. He had little chance to observe complex emotional relationships in the flesh. Are you having trouble with two women in particular? Naruto nodded his head. Yeah, lately Sakura and Ino have been acting strange with me. They've both been pretty nice and even have been hanging out with me more. He went into how everything had been differently lately. How Ino had sparred with him, how Sakura took him to her home for a nice dinner, but then how both had kissed him on the cheek. Sai thought about all of that. He thought about all that he had read in his books on the subject of girls and relationships. The sudden change in attitude of the girls was odd, plus was kissing significant. He knew that a kiss could be anything from just friendly to acts of affection. He had read that a man and a woman that have been together for long periods could develop feelings for each other, so that could explain that Sakura might have romantic feelings that had developed. But Ino was something he wasn't sure on. Ino he had only met a few times, so whatever could have caused her to act differently. It certainly is difficult, why not just confront them? Sai figured the frontal approach was best. Well, what if they just see me as a friend and I just make things weird? Naruto was worried about that. Well, not so much with Sakura. He had been trying to date her for years, but she just brushed it off. Ino was a good friend and he didn't want to make a fool out of himself again. Sai just shrugged. He wasn't sure what to say exactly. Why do you want to be with them? I mean, is there any kind of attraction to them? Naruto looked at Sai like he had grown a second head and it started to sing show tunes. Are you kidding? Sakura-chan and Ino-chan are two of the best-looking girls in the village. Didn't you call Ino-chan gorgeous the first time you met her? In fact, Naruto was a little weary of talking to Sai about Ino. If he thought she was good-looking, would he try to help him out? What if he wanted Ino for himself? But then again, he didn't know how Sai felt about Ino anyway. Sai remembered that meal at the barbecue place with Team Asuma. Actually, I found that when I tried to give nicknames to people on their attributes, they get angry, so I picked the opposite. Naruto blinked a few times, remembering how he used to call Sakura an ugly hag, and if what he said was true, then he thought that Ino was ugly as well. What the hell did this guy look for in a girl? Both were beautiful, so how could anyone consider them anything but that? What the hell do you find good looking in a woman then? Sai thought about it and shrugged. I don't know, I haven't found it yet. He gave that same smile as always, and Naruto felt like more pissed off than anything by it. Elsewhere, Sakura was shopping for some new clothing. If she wanted to really entice Naruto, she realized she might need something more than her usual wear. She had worn sensible clothing all her life, but maybe she needed to be less conservative. Plus, she really didn't have any real date clothing, and that needed to be changed. She also had no idea what Ino Pig was up to. Ino had always been the one that had been more comfortable with her looks and with flaunting it. Sakura looked in the mirror of the changing room she was in. She frowned at her two setbacks. One was her forehead. Sure, it wasn't that noticeable, but being picked on so much because of as a child left her insecure about it. The next point, however, was as she looked down. Although she wasn't a total flat chest like she used to be, she hadn't really gained much either. Standing with other girls her own age, she felt a little cheated, but was Naruto a Brea girl? The fact was, she wasn't sure what he liked in a girl. He liked her for so long, but she never did figure out why. She had been horrible to him, like all the other girls had been, but he kept coming back for more. She would have to ask him that, as well as ask for forgiveness. But at least she had other things going for her. Her bright green eyes and pink hair gave her a very unique look. She wasn't fat, she was actually very slim and slightly athletic now. She hoped that there was still time with Naruto. It was true, at first she hadn't liked him at all. She had been too focused on Sasuke like all the other girls. But as time went by, she learned that Naruto was a very good friend and also a great teammate. After Sasuke left, she only had Naruto to help her through it all. He kept trying to make her smile, and she remembered how she tried to leave the village. He ended up following her to help her get Sasuke back. Looking back on it, it had been a very stupid idea. They both nearly became missing nins because of that stunt, and it was only thanks to Jiraiya that they had an official mission to find the Sound Village. The mission didn't go well, but it was then that she learned two things. First was that Naruto, despite his faults, was a really great person and someone she could depend on, and made her feel better about herself. The next was to finally take being a ninja seriously, and she had asked to train under Tsunade as soon as they got back. When Naruto left for his own training, she missed him every day. When he came back, she had been overjoyed, like a missing piece had returned to her life. It wasn't until Ino started to chase him that she realized something she had kept hidden, even from herself. She wasn't sure when she started to like Naruto more as a friend, but she knew she did. It took seeing another girl that could take that away from her that made her make a move of her own. Meanwhile, another known blonde was doing the same thing. Ino, however, did have some nice clothing for dating, but she had never really used any of it. Despite being so sure of herself sexually and in her beauty, she hadn't dated once. Oh sure, she had been interested in boys, first Sasuke, but when he left she had to let those feelings go. So she focused on her ninja training more, and time with her team, as well as looking after the flower shop. When she met Sai, she thought she found a very interesting, cute guy. He even called her gorgeous. Why Sakura blew up at that, she still had no idea, but whatever. Although she had tried to talk to him, the boy was strangely distant, not like Sasuke was. He had been cold, but Sai was just something different, not cold, more like he was just. The only thing she could think of was slightly out of reach. Like Sai was someone on the outside looking in at everyone. It was odd, but after trying, he didn't really seem at all interested in her. She didn't any vibes off him. She might still be trying to get that boy even still to notice her until she went into Naruto's mind. That had changed everything, especially how she saw Naruto. Well, she wasn't going to lose this time. She was now looking at a killer new dress that she wanted to use with Naruto. She had lost too much ground to Sakura, and it was time to really get things moving. She was currently in a green Chinese-style dress with golden patterns on it with a high collar. There were no arms to it, so her arms were totally bare. The slit on the side went high, showing off one of her long shapely legs. It was perfect for her, so she would take it. She undressed and put her normal clothing on as she was prepared to pay for it. Ino pulled open the shade and stepped out, just as the person in one of the stalls next to her walked out. Both women were surprised to see the other and both cursed whatever luck there was working against them. Forehead, Ino said to Sakura. Ino pig, Sakura said back just as calm. The girls glared at each other as the long-time rivalry kicked in. Even as friends they still didn't like to lose to the other. So now they were both in a bit of a staring contest, that is until Ino saw what Sakura had and smirked. It would seem that Sakura had similar plans for the future. Oh, shopping for new clothing, why would you ever want to do that? Ino said slyly. I could say the same to you, Sakura said in retort, seeing the dress. Aren't you afraid to show a little too much in such a daring thing? I only needed a dress, by the looks of you, you needed a full wardrobe. Ino smirked at the bag filled with new clothing. I don't see why you needed all that, I've just needed one nice dress, I've kept my closet up to date for other things than being a ninja. You never know when a cute guy will come along. Ha, take that Pinky. Ino smirked at the job to Sakura's zero track record in dating. But Sakura wasn't going to be the only one to pull on that card. Sakura just shrugged as though it was nothing. Well, I was concentrating on being a real ninja and to become strong. Besides, since when have you ever been on a date? Last I saw you tried to get Sai to notice you, and how did that turn out? Back at you pig. Sakura smirked at the blonde. Both girls stared coldly at the other, not either one budging from their spot. I'm not going to lose to you, this time, Ino said with a small smile. This one wasn't one of malice. This was a pure challenge to a friend and rival. I may have gotten behind you as a ninja, but I'm catching up. I also plan not to lose to you in love either. Sakura returned the smile. Good, but I won't make this easy, you know. No longer hostile, the girls' attitudes quickly changed, the kind that only other women would be able to understand. To any male looking, they wouldn't be able to see how two women could be at each other's throats 1 minute and totally change the next. It was just another reason why men would never totally understand the mind of a woman. I know, Ino told her with a nod. That's why I'm going to do my best, besides he's worth it. Sakura gave a slight smile as she thought of Naruto and how the dinner with her family had been. It had been a very relaxed and fulfilling moment. Her family liked him and the entire night had felt just right to her, like he fit in perfectly with her life in something more than just friend and teammate. Yeah, despite everything he is, isn't he? Both girls giggled at the shared joke, knowing full well Naruto's good and bad points. Well then, to the next round. Ino nodded her head as they shook hands. They learned the lessons from Sasuke. They would fight their hardest, but they wouldn't destroy their friendship over it. They may fight it out, but in the end they would always maintain their friendship no matter what. They paid for their clothing and had just left the store when they heard a familiar voice. Oh, Ino-chan, Sakura-chan, what are you two doing together? They turned to see Naruto walking up behind them on the road. Both girls gave each other a look. It would seem that the next round had just started and both girls wanted to get the first jump at Naruto. And poor Naruto had no idea what was to come. He had just been walking thinking on the things he read in Sai's books and his own talks with the boy. He didn't expect to run into his said problems at once. What he also didn't notice was the shadow following him. Up in the buildings behind one of the signs was Sai, in his usual civilian clothing. He had been curious about human relationships and Naruto's problems seemed very unique. It was possible that both girls liked the boy, but maybe he was reading it wrong. Human emotions were so very complicated that he ended up doing the wrong thing. Maybe by studying Naruto and the girls he could get some valuable insights. He had a small notebook with him as he was ready to make notes on what he observed. Ino and Sakura both were a little surprised to see Naruto looking at them, although Ino was quicker into action. She smiled as she latched onto his arm eagerly. Hey Naruto, you know we were just talking about you. She made sure that she pressed her brea into his arm. By the way he was blushing, she knew that she had his attention. Really? Naruto couldn't help but feel the nice softness pressing into his arm. Yes we were, Sakura said as she put on her own smile and followed Ino's lead with doing the same. Although she felt her face heat up with it, she never was able to be as outgoing as Ino, but she wouldn't be left behind. Now Naruto was really blushing, as he had in his opinion, the two prettiest girls in the village wrapped around his arms pressing up against him. He knew that he had been thinking about something while walking, but for the life of him he couldn't remember anymore. Something about the girls, but with all the blood rushing to his head to blush and then going lower in a tug of war was screwing up his ability to think clearly at the moment. I wanted to thank you for the training you were helping me with and also wondering if you were free. Ino said to him. Hey wait a minute, I was going to ask if he was free. Sakura narrowed her eyes at her friend rival. After all we're teammates and with all the missions we've had lately, Naruto and I haven't any real time to hang out. But you two go on missions all the time, so you get to see each other more. I hardly see Naruto at all since we're on different teams. What do you say Naruto, will you keep me company for a bit? Ino smiled up at him, all the while grinning in her mind. If Sakura wanted to spend more time with him, she was going to have a fight on her hands. Ino needed more time with Naruto to make sure the boy knew he had other options to him now. Although given how thick he was at times, she knew it wouldn't be easy. But she really did want Naruto to look at her as more than a friend. He had this warmth about him, and she had felt the kinds of emotions he had in his head. He had felt his feelings for Sakura, both the longing and the sadness when she hadn't noticed him at first. A boy that could feel as deeply as she knew he could, was rare and she wished to have someone who thought of her like that. It was true, that both she and Sakura had been fools when younger, but now they both wanted to have that same boy. Only this boy wouldn't reject them, this boy would open his heart fully to whoever could get it. Sakura for her part didn't want Ino to get too much of a head start and she knew one thing that Naruto couldn't say no to. Well, I was going to ask him to get some ramen with me, as a treat for how hard he's been working lately. What? Really? Naruto's head turned to Sakura so fast it might he snapped the neck of someone else. Ino narrowed her eyes. Oh, so that's how you want to play it then, huh? That was a low blow, girl, but I can play just as dirty as you can. Ah, I was going to take Naruto there, and I was even thinking of paying for it too, Ino whined, but in a more cute way. Thankfully, with working at the flower shop she had a second income. True, it didn't pay like a ninja's pay could at times, but it certainly helped her to save money. She would need that too, given how much Naruto ate and all. Now Naruto's head turned to Ino, totally surprised by that. Really, Ino? Man, only Iruka-sensei would pay for my meals, no one else really has done that for me. Well, I could, Sakura said quickly. After all, I made you pay last time, so I should return the favor, right? Hey, I offered first, Ino said. Well, he's my teammate, Sakura said back. Meanwhile, up above, Sai was taking some very interesting notes. At first he wasn't sure, but it would seem that the girls were fighting over who he spent time with. This seemed to be with what he read, how women will fight for their man, as it were. So this could indicate that they both wanted him, although it could also just be a regular argument. He noticed that Sakura and Ino had an odd relationship. They were both very friendly with each other, but at the drop of a hat they seemed to get angry with each other. It was a bizarre friendship, even though Sai was confused on most issues on friendship. He knew that he would never totally understand the one those two held. He caught movement as all three were now moving off, apparently they had all agreed to eat together. Sai followed as he made a few notes for himself. This was very interesting to study this in person, real life experiences were much better than books. As he sat on the building next to the Ichiraku ramen stand, he had a problem. He could barely see them, he could just make out the voices, but he needed a bit more help. He pulled out his scroll of paper and special chakra-infused ink. He created a simple mouse that he could use to help observe his friends. Meanwhile, Naruto was nearly drooling at the prospect of ramen. Although he had each girl beside him, once ramen entered the brain, he pretty much pushed everything else aside. It was one of the few things that Naruto's unfortunate case of having a short attention span was negated. The girls gave their single orders to Naruto's 8. It was still a sight to see how much Naruto could eat. After his third bowl, Ino sighed, "Okay, I'm envious. You can eat all that and still not gain weight, while I have to work out to keep in the shape I'm in." "I think it's because Naruto has a heightened metabolism," Sakura said as her mind went into medic mode. "Given how fast he heals, that means his body must work overtime, so it also needs more fuel to burn." Naruto never thought about that before, although he wasn't sure what metabolism was. He heard the word before but wasn't sure on the full meaning. It was just another thing that made Sakura so smart, she knew all kinds of things. He thought about Ino, he wondered what kind of stuff she knew. She worked in a flower store, so she might know about them. He wondered at times what kind of things the girls knew that he never thought to ask about. Well, it was something to think about as he dug into his new bowl of ramen. "So Naruto-kun, you seem to have gotten a bit popular lately," Ayame teased, seeing the two girls with him. She had known about Naruto's attraction to his teammate, and it seemed that now only the pink-haired girl was interested, the blonde girl was also interested. She remembered her name as Ino. She had come in only a few times, but she was one of Naruto's friends and she made sure to remember all of those. Tsuki cast a look over his shoulder and smirked, seeing what his daughter had pointed out. He didn't envy the boy once he realized what was going on. "Huh? What do you mean by that, Ayame-nichan?" Naruto asked. Both girls next to him sweat dropped at his clueless expression. It was a bit cute to see his face look so innocent like that. But at times, being so dense, it was hard to get him to see what was going on around him. Ayame giggled as she waved it off. "Oh, nothing, I guess. So have you three been hanging out lately?" Now Naruto's face lit up. "Oh yeah, Sakura-chan and Ino-chan have been really fun to hang out with lately." He failed to notice the slight blushes on the girls. "So Naruto, who is more fun to hang out with?" Ino asked as she leaned over to him. Naruto thought about it. He hadn't thought about it like that. He only thought about how he enjoyed his time with them. "Well, it's hard to say. Both of you have been really nice lately to me." "Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking about." Naruto snapped his fingers, remembering what he had forgotten about earlier. Now he got a bit more nervous as he was wondering how to approach this. Were they just being more friendly, or did one of them like him? He kind of hoped for Sakura to like him, but Ino had been on his mind lately as well. "Why have you two been a bit more friendly to me lately?" What do you mean?" Ino asked, a little nervous. She wasn't sure how to handle this kind of question without telling him the truth. Telling him that she entered his mind for a prank and got stuck, leading her to see all kinds of personal memories he might not take that well. She would tell him, when the time was right after all, but not now. "Well, we hardly ever talk or hang out that much." Naruto thought about his past with Ino. "I mean, sure, we went on a few missions together and seen each other, but until a little while ago we haven't hung out like we have. Plus then there's Sakura-chan being nicer to me as well." Sakura frowned as he said it like that. "Are you saying I'm not nice?" "And no, I mean you've been a lot nicer since I came back and all," Naruto said in a panic, knowing the temper the pink-haired girl had and the new strength behind her punches. "I mean, you took me to your parents, which was really nice, and I can't remember the last time you hit me." Sakura winced at that last bit. Sure, she had matured since he had gone and had really missed him. It was that time away that made her really appreciate Naruto in her life. She admitted she hadn't been the best while younger, although she was being gentler with him lately. "Well, you haven't done anything worth it. I mean, you haven't done that stupid jutsu you taught Konohamaru in front of me or done anything like that. Geez, you shouldn't be so violent, Sakura, Ino said with a sly grin as she moved a bit closer to Naruto. I don't think men like violent women. What do you think, Naruto? Well, Naruto wasn't sure what to say at this point. If he said the wrong thing, he could get Sakura mad, but he couldn't think of what would be the good thing to say. He quickly tried to either find the right thing to say or look or a way to change the topic. I'm not violent, Sakura shouted out at her. Besides, you're just as violent as I am. What? Says who? Ino demanded as she slammed her hands on the tabletop. Shikamaru and Choji for one, Sakura said to her. She had heard all the stories from Ino's teammates, and although they did like Ino as a sister, the blonde girl could be very controlling and scary to the guys when she wanted to be. I mean, who wants a controlling woman? I am not controlling, Sakura. Ino glared at the pink-haired girl as both girls only glared at each other. The tension was so great that you could cut it with a knife, although Naruto was glad for the save now he had to deal with two violent girls. He still remembered how that barbecue place was trashed with Ino's team and his own. There was no way he would endanger the holiest of places, the Ikikuru ramen bar. He had to think of something to do to get the girls to calm down before someone threw the first blow. Well, that was good, Naruto quickly said, although he could still go for a few more bowls. He made a plan to come back later for a quick snack. Does anyone want me to walk them home? That got both girls' attention as what they were fighting over was quickly forgotten. Both wanted to have Naruto walk them home because if one could, then they would be able to get Naruto alone. Already plans were being made with the girls as they both wanted to talk to him without the other getting in the way. So they agreed, paid for their meals and walked out. There was only one more problem. Sakura lived one way and Ino lived in the opposite direction, so Naruto was once again stuck. Naruto should be the one to walk me home, Sakura said politely as she could. After all, I bet my mother would love to see him again. Well, that is nice, Ino said with a fake smile, but he already just met them, and I wanted to show him around if he has the time. Besides, I'm the one that sees him less after all. Naruto wasn't sure why, but he was feeling very awkward at the moment. Both girls were giving off strange vibes and it was actually kind of scary. He had thought that he found a way out of this, but now he had to choose. On the one hand, walking with Sakura was a dream come true, but he also didn't want to alienate Ino. She had been really fun to hang out with lately and he didn't want to blow anyone off. He mentally sighed. It was like trying to turn left and right at the same time again. He thought about that as an idea hit him. Hey, there's no reason to worry, Naruto said, grinning that fox-like grin of his. Remember who you're with. He placed his hands in the cross seal as a large puff of smoke was created. There were now two Narutos, him and a shadow clone. When the smoke cleared, one went with Ino and the other walked over to Sakura. There, now I can walk with you both, one of them said. Because of the smoke, the girls weren't sure which one was the real one and which was the clone. It was a solution to the problem at least, so the girls decided to accept it rather than write about it. Sai had the mouse come back to him when he noticed they were ready to leave. He laid out a blank scroll as the mouse sat in the middle of it. With a few hand seals, Sai activated the special jutsu inside of the mouse. The mouse melted back into ink as an entire transcription of what everyone said was now written onto the scroll. He would use this as a reference material later on. He hadn't noticed when he was no longer alone, but he felt a sudden shift behind him. He quickly turned around. Root training took over, and if he was in his ninja gear, he would have gone for the short Anbu blade he usually kept on his back. But he was in his usual black civilian clothing. Not bad, kid. Most wouldn't have noticed me until later on. Jiraiya smiled at the young pale person. Jiraiya-sama, I'm sorry, it was just a reaction, Sai apologized. Jiraiya waved it off. Don't sweat it, kid. I'm just here to check in on my apprentice, as apparently you seem to be doing. Jiraiya picked up the school and quickly read through it. He had to shake his head. He knew just how clueless Naruto was, but even without any voice tone, Jiraiya could see what was going on with just the words printed in front of him. Actually, he'd have to see if he could get a copy. This could be decent material for the new book idea he had. Inspired a bit, of course, by last night, but this would definitely help him with another plot line. The boy is totally clueless, it seems, Jiraiya stated, giving the scroll back to the youth. You know what is going on? Sai asked the older man. Boy, do you have any idea who you're talking to? Jiraiya of course didn't mean it literally, but he continued on anyway. He hopped onto one foot as he struck a pose similar to the one he used when he first introduced himself to Naruto all those years ago. I am the Toad Sannin, the great sage of the toads. Men fear and envy me, women swoon as they see me. I am the master of 1,000 jutsus, and author of one of the greatest novels of all time. If anyone can understand the heart of a woman, then I can. Sai blinked, not sure what to make of the spectacle. Oh, so what exactly is going on? Jiraiya composed himself now. It seems that Naruto has both girls after his heart. Which he'll choose is hard to say, but if he doesn't figure it out soon, there might be trouble later on. But at any rate, I think a little more research into the subjects are in order, and with you here I have the perfect way to follow them both. He looked to see the two girls going on different directions with a Naruto with them. He could now follow one and have Sai follow the other and then compare notes. Things were certainly getting much more interesting in his life now. First, the love of his life had finally accepted him, and now his prize student was having two young attractive girls fighting over him. Oh, what he wouldn't give to be young again. Ino walked with Naruto. At least she hoped it was Naruto after all. It was impossible to tell the difference. But still, at least if this was a clone, the original will know of the events. She knew that Naruto had learned that about the shadow clone ability while training in Wind. It was odd knowing so much about Naruto like she did now. She most likely knew more about him than anyone else alive. She even experienced the memories as well, although a few of those memories would never leave her. One would be how he witnessed death for the first time with that boy Haku, who Ino still didn't think it was within nature for a boy to be that pretty, and Zabuza. Even a cold-hearted killer had found his heart thanks to Naruto. Other things like the battle with Sasuke when he left, she would never see Sasuke in the same light. She couldn't believe the boy tried to kill Naruto, plus that awful second transformation. The boy looked like a monster. Ino knew she would have nightmares of that in time. But she didn't want to think on that, she wanted to focus on Naruto. It felt nice just walking with him, she even slipped her arm with his. He was surprised and she noticed the blush on his face, but she only smiled at him. He got a bit more at ease as they walked on. Oh yes, this felt very nice for her. Soon they came to her family's flower shop and she wished she lived further away. The walk was just too short for her. Well, I guess this is my spot, Ino sighed. Naruto only smiled at her. You know, I might need to come in and see the place on day. I bet you can tell me all about flowers and stuff. Ino giggled as she nodded. Oh, trust me, I know practically anything. She paused as she got a bit more serious. Hey Naruto, have you ever thought about dating anyone? I mean, we're all getting older and I wouldn't be surprised to see people starting to pair up soon. Naruto shifted a bit. It was true that he liked Sakura, but she hadn't said yes to an actual date. Sure, he treated her to ramen once, but nothing more. Well, the dinner with the family might be considered one, but he wasn't too sure. Plus, there was another issue. Would a woman be interested in him knowing his secret? How many women would be able to overlook that fact he had a demon jailed inside of him? Well, I've thought about it. Naruto trailed off, not sure what to say yet. Well, you know, I bet soon a lot of pretty girls will be after you. Ino smirked at him as he got a bit closer to him. After all, you got a lot taller and I have to say cuter since you got back. Really? Naruto blushed as he scratched the back of his head. Yes, in fact, there would be a lot of girls who might like to date you. All you should do is ask. Well, I wouldn't know who exactly. I don't know that many girls. Naruto said honestly. The only girls his age he knew were Sakura, Ino, Hinata and Tenten. So, Ino asked him as she reached up and gently trailed a hand onto his cheek. You should really think about it. Who knows, a girl that would say yes, might be right in front of you. She winked at him as Naruto's mind became a whirlwind of thoughts. Her hand felt very soft, he could smell the scent of a light perfume on her skin, he felt his heart beating faster. Naruto never really thought of Ino in anything more than a good friend, but at the moment he hadn't felt like this except with Sakura. He looked at her lips and they looked soft and inviting. Ino smiled as she walked away, making sure that she put a little extra swagger into her hips. She caught him looking in the reflection of the window and smirked in victory as she noticed him staring at her. Naruto just stood there really dumbfounded as his mind tried to process things. Then he turned into smoke as the Naruto clone was dispelled. With Sakura the same thing was going on, well she couldn't work up the never to put her arm with Naruto's. Her mind was telling her to do it, but Sakura was a bit more shy in comparison with Ino at times. But it felt right walking with Naruto down the street, like how they had just walked together as usually, but she felt something more now. Naruto was a warm presence that she just wanted to wrap around her. She hoped this was the real one as well, but at any rate with Ino out of the way she could work up the nerve to really talk seriously with Naruto. There had been something eating at her for a while now and she really needed to get it out. Naruto, I just wanted to say how sorry I am, she said seriously looking a little down. Huh, sorry about what Sakura-chan? Naruto couldn't remember her doing anything recently that she should feel sorry about. About a lot of things actually, Sakura said as she looked back on her life. The way I treated you when we were younger. I was totally out of line a lot of the time, I was just so obsessed I let it blind me to a lot of things. I know I wasn't the best friend back then, but I wanted to change and grow. When you were gone I missed you every day, some days it hurt to know that I wouldn't see you for a long time. She smiled a sad smile now. It wasn't until you were gone that I started to realize how much better my life was with you in it. You always could make me smile after Sasuke-kun left, in fact you tried to help me out. You've always helped me out and supported me and I wish I had done the same for you back then. Naruto was seriously at a loss now and it took him a moment to find his voice. Sakura-chan, you don't need to say you're sorry, I've already forgotten about that kind of stuff. Plus you've already helped me out, like with those pills you made for my elemental training. He didn't mention how they tasted bad, but it was the thought that counted. And you have been with me a lot more, plus you've been super nice recently too. Plus you're my best friend and teammate, there is no way I could ever hate you for anything you've done. Plus some of things I've done have been kind of stupid and I did deserve a few of those punches. He laughed as it was a bit true. He knew that he did stupid things at times and Sakura would straighten him out. In fact, that was secretly one of the reasons he liked her. He never had anyone growing up to show him what was right and wrong. What was appropriate and what wasn't, but Sakura did those things. He was a better person because of it. I am sorry about a lot of things though, she blushed a bit in embarrassment. Well, since you can't change the past, the best we can do it just learn and do better, right? Sakura was surprised by that. Where did you get something that profound? Naruto chuckled at that. Iruka-sensei told me that once a long time ago. I didn't really get it at the time, but I got it later on. When they got to her home she felt regret. They had been having a nice conversation and she felt a bit better that he had forgiven her stupidity when she was younger. It felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, but she still wanted to improve her relationship with him, both as a friend and as something more. Maybe it was time to finally let him see that she thought of him as something more. If she didn't, what if Ino took the advantage and because of that, Ino managed to gain Naruto's heart? Sakura wasn't sure she could take losing another, although at least it wouldn't hurt her like Sasuke had hurt her. Plus Naruto would still be around and her friend, but Sakura still wanted more than just friendship with him. She wanted to make him happy like how he made her happy. She wanted to make up for all those years and also give him years of happiness. Thank you for walking me home, Sakura said with a slight blush on her face. You know, for the longest time I thought that Sasuke-kun was the one for me. We'll get him back, I promised you that, Naruto said solemnly, still remembering his promise to her. He always carried out his promises and whatever he felt for her. If he couldn't keep a simple promise to her, then he didn't deserve her. I know, and we will get him back even if we have to smack some sense into him, she smiled at him. But looking back on it, I think I only want him back because he's our team member, our brother in a way. Brother? Naruto asked confused. Didn't she like Sasuke? I do love him, but only as a brother now, Sakura admitted to him. She wanted him to know her feelings for Sasuke had changed over the years. It was just a stupid crush I had on him, it wasn't real love. I know that now. But I still want to free him, and I know we can do it. But lately I've been thinking that I should move on with my heart. Oh yeah, Naruto felt a bit more excited now. If she didn't love Sasuke in that way anymore, did that mean he finally had a chance? Sakura nodded as her blush deepened a bit. In fact, lately I've been thinking about someone else. She saw his face and she knew that he didn't think it was him. She laughed a bit in her mind. The poor boy had some self-confidence problems with girls, even though he didn't have it with anything else apparently. She walked to her door as she opened it. I'll see you later, Naruto-kun. She told him before going through it. Naruto smiled. Sure thing, Sakura-ch. Huh, hey wait, did you just call me? He hadn't noticed it at first, but she never addressed him other than his name. She never used an honorific with his name before, let alone that one. He didn't know what to think that she actually called him that. The only one she used that had been Sasuke. So did that mean that she liked him? He suddenly disappeared in a cloud of smoke at that moment. Meanwhile, the real Naruto had been at the ramen stand the entire time. He still was hungry, and with the shadow clones he would know what would happen. When he made them, he switched out with all the smoke and let the clones take the girls home. He was happily eating some pork ramen when one of the clones' memories suddenly slammed into him. He froze at what he remembered, then suddenly the other clone's memory came as well. He froze as he tried to make sense of everything. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Ayame asked, seeing the look on the boy's face. I'm not sure. Naruto trailed off as he thought more and more on the memories he just got. Elsewhere, Tsunade had finally managed to get to the tower. After last night she really wanted to sleep in. She smirked to herself. It had been so very long since she had been with a man. She had forgotten how it was like. Plus, despite everything, Jiraiya apparently knew what he was talking about in his books. She just knew that the old pervert would turn that night into a scene in his new book when he got around to it. Well, she didn't mind too much. It's not like anyone but her knew of what characters were who in his books. She stretched as she walked the empty halls. She hadn't felt like this since she had been a young woman. After waking up to a warm body beside her, she had taken a shower. Of course he insisted in joining her, not that she put up much of a fight against it. She had been a bit worried that Shizune hadn't woke her up, or maybe that she might have tried to. So after a mid-morning meal she took off for work. Jiraiya said something about checking on Naruto's progress. But he didn't leave without giving her a long kiss. She reached up to touch her lips. She swore she could still feel the heat there from it. She really had been an idiot all these years. She sighed, feeling light on her feet and happier than she had been in so many years. She had opened her heart up again to a man for the first time since Dan's death, and she didn't actually regret as this time. In fact, she felt more fulfilled since she had finally opened her heart up to Jiraiya. With Dan, things had been great. He had been a solid rock for her, someone she felt enchanted by, and she had been swept off her feet. With Jiraiya, things were so much different, but she still felt that same kind of love. With Jiraiya, she could be herself, she felt at ease, and in his arms she felt like she could just relax and let him be her whole world. She strolled into her office seeing that some of the work had already been done. She hoped that Shizune would have taken care of some things while she had slept in. As she came to her office and opened the door, she found her first apprentice working very hard at the desk. By the looks of it, she was organizing the paperwork. In fact, she was working up a storm. That was a bit worrying to the older woman. Shizune, slow down, there isn't any reason to work that hard, is there? Tsunade asked as she walked into the room. Shizune jumped up, but as soon as she looked up into her mentor, she looked back down. She wanted to hide the blush on her face and avoid eye contact. The memories were still too fresh in her mind and she really didn't want to think about that again. Sorry to startle you, Shizune. Tsunade smiled as her assistant got up and Tsunade took her place behind the desk as she looked over the paperwork. It was piled so far into priority, so she would get through the pile that needed her immediate look over before being approved. Normally she would get bored, but honestly she was in too good a mood to ignore. She was wondering how Sakura was doing with getting Naruto. Now that the girl had her feelings straightened out, she couldn't help but root for her. The girl was her best protege. Sakura had mastered things even Shizune hadn't been able to do. Still, Sakura had some competition in Ino. That girl could be just as stubborn and tenacious when she needed to be. If she had put that kind of effort behind her medical training, the girl could have been very close to Sakura's level. Although after the first year, Ino had passed the basic testing but had never gone any further. Then again, unlike Sakura, who could train a lot more with her team broken up, Ino had still been on an active team. Tsunade wasn't sure who the boy would pick. She just hoped that whoever lost didn't take things too hard. She knew what heartbreak could do to a person. For years her own heart had been stone to avoid the pain. She basically ran from her pain for decades. It was odd how it was a little genin that got past her walls and made her feel something other than the emptiness and pain in her heart. And it took an old pervert to show her that she could still find love in life. She looked over the papers and paused. The first one in the urgent pile was a vacation approval, for Shizune. That alone made her think for two reasons. First, it wasn't like Shizune to put her own personal stuff first, and second, she couldn't remember the last time or even first time Shizune took a vacation. She looked up and noticed that the young woman was a little odd. If she didn't know any better, she swore that the other woman was avoiding looking at her. Is there something wrong? Tsunade asked as she looked over the vacation request. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a week-long leave pass was all it was. I just wanted to take a break. I've been feeling very stressed lately. It wasn't a total lie for Shizune. She was stressed, but she also needed to get away and just relax for once. Plus, if things between Tsunade and Jiraiya kept going on as they were, she really didn't want to be around the house. Although she was delighted to see that those two were together, she knew that there was something going on between Tsunade and Jiraiya for years, but Tsunade never let him have a chance. She wasn't sure what made Tsunade change her mind, but she was thankful for it. Even the slight glances she managed to take, she could see that Tsunade was almost glowing with happiness. It had been a very long time since Shizune had seen her mentor look like this. But seeing the after events firsthand was not something she wanted to have a memory of. So she would give the two their space and for her to just get away from it all for a short time. Tsunade looked over the sheet and stamped her approval. It would be hectic around here without her around, but the young woman deserved some time off finally. Maybe the young medic would finally find herself a man for once. She grinned at that thought and passed it to her. Here you go and enjoy. Shizune took it with a bow. Thank you, Tsunade.